So as we said at the title, we're going to be looking at how supervisors' experiences might be propagating the poor mental well-being that we're seeing at the moment, because we're all very aware of what the current mental well-being crisis is for PGR students. There's been lots of studies showing it, and they demonstrate that around about 2/5 of all of our PGR population present with anxiety and depression, which is frightening enough. But then when you think that this is 6 times what the general population prevalence of these mental health issues is, it becomes really quite an alarming statistic that shows that there's a big problem here that we need to look at. And also there is a gender difference. So for these people who are suffering from poor mental well-being, 1/3 of them are male, a third of all male students experience this. It goes up to 40% for female students. And for students who are transgender or of another gender orientation, then this goes up to 50%. So it is a really, really significant problem. And when you tease apart some of these studies on the global stage, they come up with quite a few overarching themes, if you like. And one of these is the normalization of depression and stress and anxiety. So there's this perception and this culture in academia that if you're not stressed out, if you're not fed up, if you don't have trouble sleeping, that you're not working hard enough. And this is something that our PGR students are really feeling. There's the overwork. So the perception that if you're doing a PhD, it's not a 9 to 5. It's something that you have to do outside of hours. And then also the balance between hard output versus the belonging and support. And this is something that has been touched on earlier as well, where the measures that we have for success for PGR and for academics as a whole are based on metrics such as the number of papers you get, the number of grants, the amount of grant funding that you get, and having the focus on that rather than the whole experience of doing your postgraduate study causes a big incongruence, because to be able to get a lot of those hard outputs, it can have a very negative impact on belonging and support. And so that plays into the overall theme of work-life balance or work-life imbalance, as the case is in academia. So this is the situation as it is globally, but we were interested in what's actually happening at our institution. So just at our single institution, what are our students feeling? Because then we can have a look at how we can try and address this. And we did a small study. This was something that I set up, and I'm not a postgraduate developer. I don't have a background in social sciences or sociology, anything like that. I'm a molecular biologist, but I am a concerned supervisor. So the idea of this was just to see what's happening in our students. And you can see the rates of depression are similar to what we have in the global population, but anxiety, stress, insomnia are massively higher. And only around about 10% of our students actually say that they don't have any of these problems. And if only 1 in 10 of our students are saying that they're happy, then that's a big problem. When we went through this, we also asked students to identify how we can improve things. And they came up with 5 different themes, which you can see here. So we've got university systems, network building, finance, wellbeing monitoring, and then the one that we're going to focus on today, which is supervisor training. You can read a lot more about this if you're interested in what we did and what we found. It's in the paper that's just on the screen at the bottom there, which very conveniently got published about 4 days ago. So, you know, that's if you want to learn more, please feel free to read there. When we asked the students what they're stressed out about, they came up with quite a few things, none of which were perhaps surprising. Strangely enough, their thesis and their viva did not come up, which I was surprised by. But all the things that we see here, like peer pressure, isolation, being given too much independence and not enough guidance, the expectations that you're going to be hitting the ground running when you might struggle, job prospects, guilt, imposter syndrome is a massive one, and the financial implications of doing a PhD as well. And what we noticed when we looked at all these things is that these are actually things that they're the challenges that academics face as well. You know, so academics still have this problem with high expectations, with imposter syndrome definitely, with being given too much independence and not enough training on how to become a supervisor and succeed in academia. And so that's why we've decided to look at what the supervisor relationship might actually be causing. So I'm going to hand over to Russell now, if you're there.
Thanks, Kirsten. So, hi, I'm Russell, everybody. I lead our PGR framework, which is all about training and development. So that's where my interest in this comes from, and I do supervise PhD researchers. If you hold a mirror image up to the stats that we had for PGR mental health and well-being, then you see really similar things which we've known about anecdotally and empirically for a while. But if we kind of work through a couple of the examples, then the stress issue is one that's reported a lot, repeatedly at different levels. And then some work was done about, well, how stressed rather are people? What does that look like? And what you discover is that clinical psychologists studying this would actually suggest that people were so under depression, anxiety, and stress that they could technically qualify for a mild mental health disorder. And then more recently, this idea that in certain universities, and ours does reflect this, Bradford does reflect this rocketing increase of mental health services, but for academic staff, and in particular research staff. And the most famous one is the Times Higher Education one. That's the one on the right, the Bothwell article. And I presume, slightly stereotypically, the blue bars are males, the red bars are females, and the green bars are male and female, but professional services staff involved in academic work. And you can see that most people sit in the reasonable amount and a lot, and there's quite a decent distribution in the a little. So this kind of thing is being debated a lot more and more hotly. So Kirsten, could you move the slide on, please?
There we
go. Thank you. So I hope I don't sound imperious when I'm asking Kirsten to help me with the slide. Our concern, I'm not going to read what's on the screen to you because you can see the quotations. These are real quotations from different sessions. They're slightly composited to protect identity. The main point to take from these things that people have said in staff sessions is the fact that this is the basis from which some people are beginning their fledgling relationship with a new researcher that comes to them, which is worrying because, of course, all research staff are encouraged to take PhDs, get funding for doctoral students, doctoral researchers. So that's a real concern if this is where a relationship begins from and if this stuff's left unprocessed. Kirsten, could I have the next one? So I'm just aware of the time and I'm not trying to rush, and we can definitely take questions on this. We did start thinking about what would we actually do about this, because I think getting some of the negative and toxic elements out and processing it's quite important to start from that kind of place. But then there's things that we know we need to do, not just as an institution, but as a sector, and that's what we reflect on here. I suppose that idea of the first two are quite important, but that fifth tile, the embracing and modelling work-life balance for each other, for junior researchers who are becoming mid-career researchers, and that these would then be modelled and scaffolded for doctoral researchers of any type, then that seems quite crucial and important. But that involves systemic changes, and it involves a shift in culture. But I'll just put my 2 pence in. I really think we need to work on that first tile as well, because professional services and often, not all, management teams don't want to do anything other than give out a message of everything's okay and business as usual. Kirsten, could we have the next one? And then we're going to stop here, and I am going to read this one to you because I think it really captures a flavour of how people feel. So if we bring it full circle to how our researchers feel, then they think we need to work to reduce the highly pressured environment that's essentially designed to result in feelings of failure and imposter syndrome, and that the institution has to remember that students are human and they're not thesis and output machines for other people's careers or for our stats, and that we need to be giving frequent advice on well-being and diet, exercise, rest and work-life balance. That's a really interesting part of that, I think. And working to eliminate the culture of bad mental health, so where people are not currently burnt out or suffering from mental illnesses are considered to be not working hard enough. And this whole thing about the number of people who are actually on prescription drugs to manage the stress, and not just stress, but levels of anxiety and discomfort and emotional pain that they're in, that needs to be addressed, because it's seen as the norm that you perhaps go to the doctor and end up on something if you are experiencing those issues, and that's reflected in what happens with staff as well. Now, I know that was a whistle-stop tour through our material, but obviously Kirsten and I are really happy to answer any questions.